The learning outcomes for this video are defining and understanding the different types of relationships, understanding how to identify the min and max of an entity relationship diagram, and reading an entity relationship diagram and translating the cardinality into English. To start off, we will define a few keywords. Cardinality defines how many instances of one entity can be associated with instances of another entity. An instance is one specific example of an entity. For example, the name Mark is an instance of the entity student. Cardinality is also called the maximum constraint. It describes a relationship type between two entities, namely one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. Here we have an entity relationship diagram demonstrating a one-to-one relationship. We have employee entity and employee ID entity with the relationship assigned to. Each employee is assigned to exactly one employee ID, and each employee ID is assigned to only one employee. Next, we have a one-to-many relationship. A library can own many books, but each book belongs to only one library. If we look at the instances here, branch A contains book 1 and book 2, branch B contains book 3. However, each book is associated with only one branch. Next, we have a many-to-many relationship. So a student can enroll in many courses, and each course can have many students. Alice is enrolled in CS 101, Junhee is enrolled in Math 200, David is enrolled in CS 101 and Math 200. And likewise, the courses can contain many students. As we can see here, for example, Math 200 contains all 3 students. As an overview, you use cardinality to describe the overall numerical relationship between two entities. So keep in mind, when we talk about cardinality, we're talking about the numerical relationship. We went over the maximum cardinality constraints, and next is to go over the minimum participation constraints. The question to ask over here is, must an entity participate in the relationship? In total participation, every instance must participate. And we're going to highlight the word must because it is important. And in partial participation, not every instance participates. Alright, so in partial participation, it is optional to participate. In total participation, it is mandatory. Let's break down this chart showing the 4 types of minimum participation constraints. The symbols closest to the entity represents the max constraint. A line means max 1, a crow's foot means max many. The symbol next to it shows the minimum participation constraint. A line is mandatory, and a circle is optional. When you read the participation type, you say the minimum constraint first, followed by the cardinality constraint. So mandatory, 1. Optional, 1. In this first case, every instance must participate in exactly one relationship. For example, each employee must have one ID. In mandatory many, every instance must participate in one or more relationships. For example, each order must contain one or more products. In optional 1, participation is optional and can happen only once. For example, a user may have a profile picture or none at all. And lastly, we have optional many, and participation is optional and can happen multiple times. For example, a patient may have 0 or many appointments. Depending on your textbook or instructor, you might learn to draw ER diagrams in the Chen notation a bit differently. Both versions here are correct and mean the same thing. The max constraint is denoted by the relationship type, one-to-many over here. Total participation is represented by double lines, partial participation by a single line. So every pet must have an owner. But an owner may have 0 or many pets. So an owner may have 0 or many pets. Down below over here, these are the symbols we saw previously. Here we have mandatory 1. Over here we have optional many. So an owner may own 0 or many pets. A pet must be owned by one owner. Let's put it all together with a final example. A developer may be assigned to 0 or many tickets, and a ticket must be assigned to 1 or many developers. Note that the entity developer has optional participation in the relationship assigned to. This is why it is possible for David not to be assigned to any tickets. However, because entity ticket has mandatory participation, every instance of entity ticket is connected to at least one developer. That concludes this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.